All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Monday morning. Not a whole lot going on in and around the city. Do have a few things real quick to hit on. One of them is going to be an accident North Lake Drive and Lynn Creek Drive out by the lakes. Be careful as you're going through there. And another one at Assembly Street and Elmwood Avenue. Today, it's going to be hot. No surprise. High of 93. Some chance for some thunderstorms later on in the afternoon. Currently about 81 in downtown Columbia. This is traffic and weather on your Monday here on The Game. Nine o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Just Tyler Head along with you here today, really through most of this week. Jack Veltri celebrating his birthday. So if you've not wished Jack happy birthday, you can wish him a happy belated birthday on Twitter or whatever. His birthday was on Saturday the 4th. So he's out for a couple more days, enjoying his last remnants of a vacation before we all get locked in for football coming up here in just 61 days, which we'll get into our 61-day countdown coming up here in just a little bit. A lot of things to get into over the course of the show. Michael Felder, college football analyst, going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour. Also going to get into Pro Football Focus's top 50 returning players for 2026. How many Gamecocks are on the list? Might surprise you. We'll get into that coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. Also, our opponent previews looking at the Georgia Bulldogs for the penultimate week of the regular season coming up later on in the show as well. But hopefully you all had a great 4th of July weekend. Nice long weekend. Went by really fast. You know, I think there's something to be said about when a long weekend is a Friday through Sunday as opposed to a Saturday through Monday or something along those lines, like a Labor Day or Memorial Day or something along those lines. Because when you have Friday through Sunday, yes, you get the benefit of getting the weekend started early, but there's something special about the weekend extending farther on the back end when you have the Monday off, because you know you're still going through your usual Sunday routines and things like that, getting ready for work for a weekend like this past weekend. But like again, Memorial Day, Labor Day, that kind of stuff, President's Day, whatever it may be, you have that extra enjoyment of like, hey, it's Sunday and I'm not getting ready for work or whatever the next day. So hopefully you guys all enjoyed your weekend. My wife's birthday also, like Jack's, was over this past weekend. So went down to Myrtle Beach, which I hadn't been there in like 14 years. It's still as crazy and chaotic as I remember. We didn't go to like the beach part. We just kind of went to like the boardwalk and Margaritaville and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of fun there. Played putt golf for the first time in a very, very long time. Still not great at it. So I will not be joining the PGA Tour anytime soon, but had a lot of fun with that. Got some sun, just enjoyed the weather, tried to stay as cool as possible because, my goodness, was it hot over this weekend as well, as we are certainly in the dog days of summer as of right now, creeping ever closer to the start of college football season. Again, 61 days until South Carolina kicks off against Kent State coming up on September 5th. Again, we'll get into our 61-day countdown number coming up here in a few minutes. But my goodness, was it a very, very special weekend for Gamecock football on the recruiting front. We talked about it at the very end of last week. Of course, you got the Joshua Dobson commitment on Wednesday night. The days are all kind of running together. You got Joshua Dobson committing on Wednesday night, which obviously was a great move for this 2027 recruiting class. Bump South Carolina up several spots there. Obviously, one of the biggest gets of the entire Beamer era, as well, with Joshua Dobson, the defensive back who's playing his final year of high school football up there in the Charlotte area. And we knew as the next couple of days were going by, there was going to be a lot of other commitments or a lot of other announcements happening with guys that South Carolina was in the mix for. And my goodness, it was one right after the other, making their commitments to South Carolina.
The next For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be going to University of South Carolina.
And then lastly, I want to thank all my friends and my family for coming out there supporting me. And what I've told, I don't know where I'll be today. Without that being said, this is my company. 3 to 4 years, I'll be taking my talents to University of South Carolina.
So there you go. Boom, boom, boom. Since we were last here on the airwaves, you had the commitment from Davion Jones, of course, teammate to Joshua Dobson, who was a 4-star defensive back himself. Second voice you heard there was Nate Carson, the 4-star offensive lineman, and then a 3-star Jaden Brody out of the Raleigh area as well, that committed to South Carolina over the course of the weekend. And we'll get into the buy or sell results in the 11 o'clock hour with Wes and Chris, but I set the line at 1.5. After the Dobson commitment, we knew we had 3 more guys that were going to be announcing. I set the line at 1.5 on how many more of them would commit to South Carolina. Chris was very emphatic that he felt confident that was going to be an over, and he was very right on that. Again, he has the intel, they're recruiting insiders and all that, but he was extremely right on that. And to get 3 really good gets for the 2027 class, and like the Dobson commitment, all these guys elevated South Carolina to some degree in terms of the overall national rankings, the SEC rankings, and all that kind of stuff. So things very much trending in the right direction for South Carolina football when it comes to commitments. 3 of the top 5 commitments in this class are now from the guys over the weekend with Dobson, with Davion Jones, and with Nate Carson. The other guys in that top 5 are John Archer, the defensive lineman who committed back in April, and Braden Tyson, the running back out of Georgia that committed back in May. So a really good run of recruiting over the course of the summer for South Carolina. How excited are you? I guess is the question to ask, right? Because I'm always hesitant in today's day and age, especially with college football, of getting too overhyped when it comes to commitments and all that kind of stuff, because it's a long time between when these guys commit, ultimately when they sign on the dotted line, and before they suit up and play for South Carolina. For these guys, obviously, the earliest of that would be the fall of 2027. And just because a guy is a high star out of high school doesn't mean he's going to go on and be a superstar player, first-round pick, and all that kind of stuff. It's it's a hit or miss when it comes to recruiting a lot. So I always kind of temper my expectations when it comes to what these guys are at this point in time and what they're ultimately going to become to be. Now, we certainly look at the 5-star guys, 4 and 5-star guys, the blue chip recruits, as guys that have the highest upside potentially, and you certainly track them a little bit closer, hoping they live up to the billing that they have coming out of high school. But I always try and not get over my skis a little bit when it comes to what's going to happen with these, or when it comes to these guys committing, because again, there's a lot of things that happen between now and then, and like I said, a lot of time between now and when these guys ultimately sign on the dotted line coming up on early signing day in December. And in fact, when Joshua Dobson did commit last week and was talking to the media, he stirred up a little bit of panic from a lot of people in some of his comments that he made about, quote, it's long from over, obviously, until I sign on the dotted line, but now I'm 1,000% committed to the Gamecocks. And a lot of people kind of read that as, oh, hey, this thing's still wide open, and A&M or somebody could come in and snatch him. He did clarify the comment over the weekend on Twitter. He says, I want to make something very clear. I'm 1,000% committed to USC. Go Gamecocks. During the interview, the reporter asked me how I felt now that the recruiting process was over. My response was that it's far from over because I still have to make it official by signing in December. The answer was about the timeline, not my commitment. I'm locked in, excited for what's ahead and ready to go to work. Spurs up. So he's trying to obviously alleviate the concerns from the Gamecock fan base, but you're very fair if you were panicking when he made that comment the other day, because he's right. It is far from over. We're in July right now. Early signing day is not until early December. That is 5 whole months until these guys can officially sign on the dotted line. And as I said, especially for a guy like Joshua Dobson, who is so high profile, those other schools, A&M, Michigan, all the other ones in the running for him, they're not going to suddenly throw their hands up and say, all right, you committed to South Carolina, I'll leave you alone. No, they're going to pressure him even more. Text, phone calls. I don't know if coaches still email now, but whatever. DMs on Twitter, all that kind of stuff to continue to try and sway him to come to their school. There's going to be NIL offers that are probably going to get thrown at him. Hey, what are they offering you? We'll give you this. We'll give you that. And all that kind of stuff. So it's that goes back to what I said a moment ago. It is always best, I think, to temper expectations and really reserve things until these guys officially sign on the dotted line, because there's no telling what can happen over the course of the next 5 months. Now, a lot of credit to Beamer and his coaching staff for getting these guys to commit, and we hope they hang on to these guys over the course of the next couple of months and they sign, and we have a great 2027 class. But again, to quote Dobson the other day, even though it wasn't the context that he meant it in, it is far from over. But, if you want to be excited about what happened over the past couple of days, you're certainly entitled to that, and here's hoping that Beamer and company can hang on to these guys and get them all committed and signed officially coming up in December. All that being said, I think this also further plays into how much pressure is going to be on Beamer going into this upcoming season, which we know, right? We talk about hot seats and all this kind of stuff, and Beamer's certainly in that mix. And when you're on this kind of recruiting run, when you're putting together a great 2027 class with these guys that believe in what you're selling here at South Carolina for the future and all that kind of stuff, you got to back it up, right? And as great as this class is, and we know that Jeremiah Donati was involved in the process of getting Dobson commit and all that kind of stuff, if Beamer goes out there and goes 4-8 again, well, guess what? They're still probably going to likely move on from him and go find a new head coach. It doesn't matter what the incoming recruiting class is going to look like. In fact, and we look at this the roster for the upcoming season with Sellers, with Stewart, with Nick Harbor, with Jacarius Peak, with all these other guys. You look at this as maybe the most talented roster that Shane Beamer's ever had to work with. And if you go 4-8 with it, or 5-7 and miss a bowl game again, then Donati would look at it and say, well, you couldn't get anything done with these guys. What makes you make me think that you're going to get anything done with this crop of unproven guys coming out of high school? You know what I mean? So I think this further just emphasizes how big and important this season is for South Carolina. It's great that they're doing all these things on the recruiting front. You got to win games this fall, right? We've been going through the opponents, and we'll get to Georgia coming up here a little bit later on in the show. You've got to find a way to make something out of this season. Even just 6-6, right? Now, I know most of the fan base doesn't want to hear that, but 6-6 would be a 2-game improvement. You would be going back to a bowl game, and it'd be a step in the right direction. Again, what Donati thinks about that, we'll see, obviously. But you got to get back to, at bare minimum, a bowl game this year, because missing a bowl in I guess that'd be, because you're going in year number 6, in half of your seasons at South Carolina, that's not acceptable in 6 years. Again, if you did end up moving on for him, most of these guys would decommit anyway and all that kind of stuff. So you want to keep this train rolling for the sake of obviously taking advantage of the guys that you have on the team right now, but also being able to welcome in this great talent that you're getting to commit left and right. South Carolina, they clearly believe in what Beamer's doing, the vision that he's selling and all that kind of stuff. Yes, NIL also plays into that. We're not dumb. We're not naive to think that South Carolina's just getting these guys for nothing. You do have to pony up and pay a certain amount for this kind of talent to come here, but also there is the culture and all that kind of stuff that we talk about that these guys can believe in too. So the message is good, right? The recruiting trail's been good. It's been consistently good in the Beamer era, but you have to back it up with your play on the field coming up this fall to ensure that this continues going forward. But within the bubble of where we're at in the moment, it was a really great weekend for South Carolina. There's still more spots to fill in this recruiting class. Again, Wes and Chris can speak on this a little bit more later on in the show because they are our recruiting insiders. But plenty of reason to be happy about what's happening right now. And again, here's hoping that the next 5 months go smoothly and you can hang on to all these guys and sign them for the 2027 class, and they all can pan out to be superstars here at South Carolina for a very, very long time to come. But if you were looking for things outside of the 4th of July and all those festivities going on to be excited about, what Carolina's doing on the recruiting front is really, really good. And hopefully it does continue going forward. And hopefully these are positive signs for what the 2026 fall season is going to be. Because, my goodness, none of us want to talk about a bad football team again, right? Like last year, especially compared to 2024, was so unfun. Right, you get late in the season, and we were saying, all right, there's this theoretical path where Carolina can win this game and that game, get themselves back to a bowl, but especially after that A&M loss where you knew you're really not playing for anything at this point in time, that wasn't fun, and I don't want to be in that position again. I really hope this team's a lot better. I really hope they live up to all the potential and all the hype that some people are choosing to give to them because of the talent on the roster. Not a lot of people are. As we say, Beamer teams typically tend to do their best when they're being doubted and when they're being overlooked. So hopefully that's a positive sign. It is an even year. Even year Beamer's a thing, and I hope it's a thing again in 2026. Certainly doing a lot of great things on the recruiting front, and hopefully that continues as well. But we are but 61 days away from kickoff against Kent State to start the season. What does the number 61 mean? We'll tell you about it coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, along with you, flying solo on your Monday here on The Game.
All right, everyone, as we close out the first hour here, let me tell you guys about AAA Heating and Air, where home comfort is their top priority. Give a call today at 803-677-1500 to schedule a seasonal maintenance appointment. Let AAA Heating and Air's qualified technicians put your mind at ease with a thorough inspection and cleaning of your heating and cooling system. Join their popular AAA Comfort Club to take advantage of special extras like flexible visits, added discounts, and priority scheduling. AAA Heating and Air also offers indoor air quality products that work with your HVAC system to improve your home's air quality. Cleaning the air eliminates common household odors, removes allergens and pollutants, and can even improve sleep and reduce the spread of some viruses. So go to callAAAtoday.com for more info. Again, that is callAAAtoday.com for more info. Tell them Jack from 107.5 The Game sent you on over.
All right, welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Again, college football analyst Michael Felder going to join me coming up at 9:30. We're going to bounce around all the topics going on in college football in the offseason. But right now, we're focusing on the number 61 because we are 61 days away from South Carolina kicking off against Kent State on September 5th. And what's probably going to be about as hot as it is right now, maybe even hotter. Maybe we'll actually get into the hundreds for that one. So, again, start hydrating and getting your sunscreen on now. Again, 61 days until that game kicks off. So the number 61 brings us to Lenora Sellers' completion percentage for 2025. Now, technically, it was 60.8, but I rounded up to 61 because, close enough there. And to no surprise, if you haven't been looking at Lenora Sellers' stats, that is down from what it was the year prior. So in year number one at South Carolina as the starter, Lenora Sellers was about 66% completion percentage, so an almost 5-point drop from year one to year two as Carolina's starting quarterback. And we put so much blame last year on what was wrong with Lenora Sellers on Mike Shula, rightfully so. There was a whole lot wrong with that offense, the concepts, the execution, all that kind of stuff that squarely went on Mike Shula's shoulders, which is why he was fired late in the season. And now we have Kendall Briles, and we're hoping and expecting that Kendall Briles is going to be able to right that ship in a lot of ways. But I really dove into the numbers last night on Pro Football Focus of kind of the breakdown of the way Sellers was passing the ball a season ago. And maybe to my surprise, the numbers in terms of where he was throwing and how he was throwing were similar in a lot of ways. There was a slight increase when it came to downfield throws. His completion percentage did drop on that, but he did have more touchdowns compared to in 2024. But what really stood out to me is in both years as a starter, he was almost the exact same percentage-wise in terms of attempts at or behind or near or behind the line of scrimmage. So Pro Football Focus breaks the field up, or breaks passing depth up into four categories: behind the line of scrimmage, short, which is between 0 and 9 yards, medium between 10 and 19 yards, and deep 20-plus yards, all past the line of scrimmage, obviously. So last year and in 2024, under both Mike Shula and Dow Loggins, Lenora Sellers attempted exactly 57% of his passes in that short area, either behind the line of scrimmage or in the short range between 0 and 9 yards past the line of scrimmage, which those are the easier throws, right? You're not throwing as far down the field. You're not asking receivers or tight ends to run as complex of a routes, check downs, dump offs when you're in trouble, kind of a safety net, somebody right there you can get the ball off to. So those numbers are the exact same, but the completion percentage for him in that area of the field, particularly in the short range from 0 to 9 yards, dropped almost 10 full points. He went from 74.5 to 66.9 from Dow Loggins to Mike Shula last year. So it kind of begs the question in my mind of, okay, why would that be? Now, O-line play does matter, and again, we know the protection wasn't good. He was running for his life both seasons, but did a better job of getting out of trouble as opposed to when he hung onto the football maybe a little bit too long last year, had some bad sacks, had some bad throws, throwaways, interceptions, those kind of things. And we expect Briles' scheme to, fix that, be better. We expect the offensive line to be better and all that kind of stuff. But also, as I dove into these numbers, it really stood out to me. I think Lenora Sellers benefited from having a veteran check down in that short range in 2024 in Josh Simon, who was always there when he was needed. And again, he was the leading receiver for the team in that 2024 season, holding 40 balls that year, I believe. And when I looked at his numbers of where he was always at, 78% of his receptions came in that short area of the field, either behind the line of scrimmage or basically between 0 and 9 yards past the line of scrimmage. So he was always there. He was always available. And obviously he bailed Carolina out of trouble in a lot of instances. You didn't have that last year, right? Like Josh Simon had played a lot of college football prior to joining South Carolina. And you could see that in the connection that he had with Lenora Sellers, a young quarterback that, he could help out in situations when he was in trouble. He didn't have that last year, right? You had receiving options. I mean, Nick Tarver was your deep ball guy. Brady Hunt hauled in some catches at tight end, Mo Brown as well, but you didn't have that consistent guy. Now, as the season went along, and here's where kind of my optimism for this is, as the season went along, it definitely seemed like Jaden Sellers was that guy, right? Of course, they have the connection of being brothers and have played together for a very, very long time, so those guys on the same page in a lot of ways. And when I look at the breakdown of where Jaden Sellers was catching the football a lot last year, not as much as Josh Simon in that short range. His numbers bear out to be about 67% in that behind the line of scrimmage to short area of the field. Definitely the most. That's where the majority of his catches went. Did have some deeper stuff as well in that medium to deep range, but the majority of his stuff was in that short range of the field, like we saw in the Coastal Carolina game. He took that basically screen pass all the way in for the touchdown on the very first game of the play of the game, I believe. So as the season wore on, that became more of a consistent option for Sellers to have in that short range of the field. I wonder how much more that's going to improve this upcoming year. And again, we're hoping the offensive line plays better, where he doesn't need that check down option, so frequently. And that obviously this scheme is going to open things up for Lenore Sellers more to fit his skill set, where he doesn't always need that check down option, but it's certainly something that's good to have. And you saw the difference in one year to the other in terms of having that and not having that. It's consistently for Lenore Sellers. So if anybody's going to be that guy, it's probably going to be Jaden Sellers. And again, the chemistry those guys have from playing so much football together certainly helps that out. But I thought that was an interesting thing that kind of came up as I was diving into Lenore Sellers' numbers on why his completion percentage did dip as much as it did from one year to the next. And I do think not having that consistent check down veteran presence right there in that short area of the field did play a contributing factor, and we'll see if that changes this upcoming season or not. Again, we'll get into our preview of Georgia as the next opponent coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. But up next, our guy Michael Felder, college football analyst, joins me on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines to talk all things college football offseason as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head, along with you here on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Starting a new week and inching ourselves closer to the start of the college football season. Always excited to be joined on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines by our guy, Michael Felder, college football analyst. Michael, appreciate the time as always, man. Hope the 4th was good. And do you feel like after the 4th holiday, we've officially turned the corner to football really being right around the corner?
I mean, look, man, the 4th was hard. It was hot. I don't know why everyone wanted to be outside. Should have been inside. But, yeah, we're turning the corner. I still have one more thing I have to do, which is I got to go to Michigan for my wife's cousin's funeral.
Okay.
Awesome. But then, yeah, when I get home from that, I'm hitting the ground running. I'm going to ACC Media Day. ACC Kickoff is what they like to have it called. And so I'm going to that, and we'll be like that. Once that happens, you're in it.
Right. Yeah, and for us, we're doing the countdown 61 days until Carolina plays a little bit sooner for your North Carolina squad because they're playing on week 0 against TCU.
In Ireland.
In Ireland, yes. Well-known fan bases for both teams representing in Ireland.
Yes, it's going to be really interesting. Playing at, I believe it's Aviva Stadium. Do they call it the pitch or the field?
I think it's a pitch. Officially,
Yeah,
well, when football's being played, is it a field? Like I don't know how those rules work.
But is it football or football?
Well, I'm going back and forth with the World Cup stuff right now, man. I don't know what's what.
Yeah, so we're closing in on it. Obviously, every team has their own issues. I will say that I think that not having the second transfer, the post-spring transfer portal, has helped teams kind of solidify who they are across the board, and I think that's a good thing for the sport. And you guys being able to hang on to Lenore Sellers, that's a huge thing. And for my team, for UNC, obviously, we're not gonna tussle over the Carolina thing. It was good that UNC didn't have to worry about post-spring transfers in or out.
Right.
So it's a good thing.
I definitely want to get your thoughts on North Carolina coming up in a minute, but I'm always interested to hear people's thoughts outside of the Columbia bubble of how they view South Carolina. Of course, we know this is a critical year for Shane Beamer as a year number 6 and, needing to get back to a bowl game at the very least. But how do you view this team? Lenore Sellers comes back, Dylan Stewart, Nick Harbor, bring a lot of other transfers. On paper, this should be a really, really good team. But as we know, the SEC is a gauntlet, and that's not always guaranteed. How do you view what you know about South Carolina at this point in the offseason?
I'm glad you started with the bowl game because I don't think we talk about that nearly enough because everybody's so obsessed with playoff. But coming out the gate, if you can get if they can get the first 3, right? Kent State, Towson, and Mississippi State, you get those first 3, okay, you're halfway there. And then you got to deal with Kentucky. Who knows what's going to happen at Florida? I know they got Summerall there now, and they like that they're starting to become a player-led team, but who knows what's going to happen with them. I don't know what's going to happen with Oklahoma, honestly. So you mentioned the gauntlet element of it all. Arkansas, new coach. Florida, new coach. And we'll see what Clemson looks like. And the only problem with Clemson for y'all is that y'all are going to play them at the end of the year.
Right.
So they might have things figured out. They might not. I don't know. Because that's one of the teams, truly, I have no bead on them. And hopefully I'll get something on them when I go to ACC kickoff. But at the end of the day, yeah, the goal, get to a bowl game. And I think with all this playoff expansion talk, we've lost it. Like for a lot of teams, for most teams, the goal should be getting to a bowl game. And I say this as someone we went to one bowl game when I was at UNC. One. And let me tell you something. This bowl game, you know where it was?
Where's that?
It was in Charlotte.
Not much of a bowl trip.
The bowl game was it was 15 minutes from my house, but we had such a great time, like hanging with the boys. And I think we do need to. I talked to Wayne Cook, who played at UCLA in the I believe late 80s, early 90s. But Wayne talks the same way that I do about bowl games. He's like, dude, we had so much fun with the boys. Like the boys we were having a good time.
Sure.
And I think that's lost on people. But if they can get to that 6 and pull it, especially if they pull an upset like playing at Alabama, obviously, at Oklahoma, hosting A&M, if they can get an upset there, you're going to feel great about that season. And then Beamer's going to feel good. And the boys get to go to a bowl game. And bowl games are, people don't realize this, they are fun. Playoff is prestigious.
Right.
Bowl games are fun.
Real quick, since you mentioned going to the Charlotte Bowl, I love old bowl names. Meineke Car Care Bowl or a Continental Tire Bowl?
Oh, I'll send it to you in the text. I got the Continental Tire Bowl.
Nice.
Commemorative football with my name on it in the background of my set. Yes, I was the Continental Tire Bowl. We played Boston College.
Oh, that's a throwback.
We beat them at everything except the football game.
Yeah, looking up the score here, 37-24.
Yeah, and they ran a fake field goal. We were like, "What?"
Oh man!
I'll tell you what, they don't know nothing. They didn't know nothing about no NASCAR. They didn't know They didn't know how to eat barbecue. We dusted them when it came to going out. We beat them at everything except the football game.
Well, you can at least have those victories.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. They were, and I will say this: there are different types of football teams.
Sure.
They were a football team that did not need a curfew. They all just went back to the hotel by themselves, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah,
we have to have somebody come and get us.
They weren't built for Charlotte, apparently. Again, Michael Felder joining us here in the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. You have some familiarity with Randy Clements, who comes in as South Carolina's new offensive line coach, spent a couple years at North Carolina. One of the few times in his career he was actually away from Kendall Briles. What can you tell us about Randy Clements as an offensive line coach and what we might be able to expect out of him this upcoming season?
I mean, I think the offensive line coach is a reflection of the offensive line is a reflection of the coach. And I think that the biggest thing for me, what you see with him, is his guys are going to be physical. And I think that's important, especially for you guys playing in the SEC. They have to be physical. And I think physicality is a big part of him. Obviously, I think he's in that same kind of atmosphere as a guy like Sam Pittman, where we're going to move you off your spot, and we're going to find ways to make sure that we can create yardage before you ever even but you're not going to touch my. I think his goal is to make sure that guys don't get touched, because he spent time away at TCU, some time at UNC. Like, this is, excuse me, his goal is to create space so that his guys don't get touched. So whoever you guys have at running back, the goal is for them to 3 yards. 3 yards should be what they are granted every play. And then you throw in the fact that Lenore Sellers obviously is a running threat. And now what you have is, I'm not going to call it an extra lineman, but when teams have to keep a focus on that quarterback and whether he gives or keeps, that does put them into conflict. And I think he's going to use that conflict to help get the offensive line more push.
Well, it's not a high bar to clear from the past couple of years, that's for sure. Michael Felder joining us here. About 2 more minutes. Of course, talked about North Carolina a little bit a moment ago. A lot quieter of an offseason this time around for Bill Belichick. Where do you set expectations for your number 2?
I think they're going to be a better football team, but better football team does not mean more wins. The schedule is not forgiving, and that's just the reality of the situation. And I don't know how people take that with respect to you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think people understand that you can be a better football team and lose the same amount of games as they did a year ago. But what I'm seeing, and this is just as a player, as a former player, what I'm seeing is a team that seems like they like each other. I don't know if you guys have heard these things, but there were issues within the team a year ago where guys did not get along. new guys, his guys, old guys, like guys that liked being at UNC versus guys who found UNC to be like an opportunity. And then you go through this off season, they bring in 40 some odd players, and it seems like the players like each other. They're doing off the field things together. They are starting to, it seems like, gel and kind of poke fun at each other. And, they take bowling trips, like position group versus position group bowling. And there's a group of guys on the team that are really into photography. And that wasn't what it was a year ago. A year ago, it was, oh, this is Chapel Bill. And Belichick has taken a step forward, to me, by making his players be the focus, not himself or his girlfriend.
Gotcha.
I think that's a huge difference. And again, it's really hard to play football with guys that you don't like. And these guys seem to like each other. They're doing a lot more community stuff, which I think is important because that's what we've always been, going to the Children's Hospital. I went to the Children's. Like, it's very, like, I feel bad saying this, but I kind of roll my eyes when people are patting guys on the back for going to the Children's Hospital. I'm like, we did that every week.
Right.
But then I realized that other people don't. What I realized is other people, we never talked about it. Like, we didn't have Twitter when I was in school. We didn't have any of that stuff. So they think this is like this new thing. And I'm like, no, we used to go to the Children's Hospital every week.
Right.
It's important.
Yeah. Well, it's Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so it just it seems like they're doing a lot more community stuff. They work at the Boys and Girls Club, and they're doing those things.
Yeah,
you learn about your teammates, but you also learn about what matters in that community, and then that community starts to circle around you, and then you really do feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself.
Well, we're certainly interested to see what year number 2 does look like for Chapel Bill, man. Appreciate your time as always. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you again before the season gets here and try and enjoy what's left of summer while you can.
I'm gonna look. Yeah, I'm looking forward to fall, man. These temperatures are crazy. I know y'all's are worse than ours.
No kidding, man. Columbia is the hottest place on earth, and it felt like it this past weekend.
All right, you guys take it easy.
All right, man. Michael Felder, their college football analyst, joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Come back, wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point here in the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head wrapping up hour number 1 here on your Monday on the Game. Yes, tonight we have Monday night football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. Not quite the same as what we'll get through the fall with the NFL this year, but nevertheless something to be excited about as America takes on Belgium in the round of 16 in the World Cup. And, this was obviously a game that everybody looked at as being tougher than the first game America won against Bosnia-Herzegovina the other day. And a big part of that was due to Flo Balogun, who scored one of the goals and was ejected with the red card in that game the other day, not being available to play because of the rules FIFA has when it comes to getting a red card. That means you're automatically suspended for the next game as well. Well, to the surprise of everybody, middle of the afternoon yesterday, we were notified that FIFA had apparently changed their mind, that they had decided to overturn the ban. We've later learned that President Trump did make a call to FIFA a couple of days ago to ask for that to be reviewed, and FIFA ultimately did end up changing their mind, which surprised a lot of people, right? But plenty of reason to be excited for it, as Flo Balogun, obviously one of the best players on the team, alongside Christian Pulisic, who talked about what it was going to mean to have Flo Balogun back for tonight's game.
I just found out on the way over here just from the guys. Obviously, for us, it gives us a boost. We're really excited. He's been so good for us this tournament, so to have him for tomorrow is obviously really exciting for us.
How does it change things on the field for you when he's out there with you?
Well, I mean, obviously we played with him all tournament, so I mean, it changes as far as like just having him as a presence out there. He does so much. He runs off the ball. He always gives an option. He's constantly a threat in behind and to score, and obviously as a team, it's really helpful.
So is America. Obviously, we're surprised but very excited to have one of the best players back out there on the pitch for tonight's matchup. Belgium on the other side, understandably very upset. Here is Belgian coach Rudy Garcia through a translator expressing his frustration with the red card suspension being overturned.
As I said to your colleague during the individual interviews, I didn't know that at FIFA World Cup, the 5th of July is now 1st April, and that it's April's Fool's then. It is new news to me. Going back to the Belgian statement that they have released, a lot of our thoughts and opinions are in the release. We're not defending the national team or the federation. We are defending football, whether it's ethic or integrity.
I will give him credit. The line about I didn't know that July 5th was April Fool's Day was actually really, really funny. And, look, we're Team America here, U.S. Men's National Team. We're happy about it, right? It's much like when a controversial call in a football game benefits your team, even though you can look at the replay and be like, oh, yeah, that probably should have been called the other way. But I'll take it because it's going to benefit my team. Very much the situation here. If the roles were reversed and Belgium had a key player get reinstated the day before the game, we'd be so mad about it, right? FIFA's so corrupt. FIFA's this, FIFA's that. But they did something to benefit America, so we're going to enjoy that, and hopefully it translates to America winning tonight's matchup with Belgium. Now, it's not completely unprecedented. In reading into this, they did defer the final 2 games of a 3-match ban for Cristiano Ronaldo during World Cup qualifiers back in November of last year. A couple Argentinian players back in April also had their bans deferred in qualifiers as well. So it's not something completely unprecedented, though something happening on this kind of stage is a lot more rare. There was a Brazilian player back in 1962 that did have his red card overturned as well. But it's something that doesn't happen a lot, which is why it was so surprising. Regardless, what's done is done now. Hopefully Flo Balogun and America can get the job done tonight. Now, if America wins this one, there's a very likely chance they're going to be matching up with Argentina, coming up in the round of 8, which in and of itself would be not Argentina. It'd be either Portugal or Spain, which would obviously be a difficult challenge there. But here's hoping they can get the victory tonight. We can continue to ride this wave. It's been fun, right? You don't have to be the biggest soccer fan in the world to enjoy the hype around the World Cup. And here's hoping that America, with the reinstatement of Flo Balogun, can get the job done tonight, and we can celebrate that victory coming up tomorrow morning. 1 hour in the books, another hour to go of the Extra Point. Pro Football Focus has put out their top 50 returning players for college football. Did any Gamecocks make the list? I'll tell you about it on the other side. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday here on the game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. As I mentioned, that big soccer tournament is still going on, and America's in action tonight. And you know, there's only one place to be when that thing kicks off tonight at 8 o'clock, and that's with our friends over at Twin Peaks. If you're in Columbia, located right down the street from us here at 600 Gervais Street down in the Vista, get there. It's probably going to be pretty full. So get there early. Make sure you pull up a bar stool. Order yourself some delicious scratch-made food from their kitchen. Chicken, burgers, fries, whatever your heart desires. They've got it for you. Pull up bar stool, get some food, and don't forget about those 29-degree draft beers to wash it all down with, as well as you root on Team USA to hopefully go all the way and win this entire thing. No matter the sport, no matter the season, no matter the day of the week, Twin Peaks is your ultimate sports lodge. Eats, drinks, and scenic views. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you again. Jack Veltri taking a few more days off, celebrating the birthday. I don't know where he's at. I don't like to ask people where they're going or what they're doing on their vacations or holidays or whatever. I'll ask them when they come back. But I have a policy of I don't want you to bother me when I'm out and away from work, so I try not to bother you. I did text Jack happy birthday the other day, but that was it. We'll get his recap of whatever he's been doing for this past week when he comes in a little bit later on in this week. But again, if you haven't told Jack happy birthday, tweet him. Happy belated birthday, Jack. 26 years old? Yeah, I believe he was born in 2000. 26 years old. And again, we'll get him in here, and he can certainly talk about everything that's been going on the past couple days of the Gamecock sports. Again, we started off the month of July on a high note with not only the Nike announcement, the official rollout of Nike gear. And we were obviously fortunate to be out there last Wednesday at Gamecock Traditions, watching all of you buy our Nike merch. And actually being out there this weekend, I was at Myrtle Beach, as I mentioned, hanging out at the boardwalk, where Margaritaville and all that kind of stuff is. Saw a lot of people walking around in Gamecock gear and a lot of Nike checks, a lot of the swooshes out there. So people certainly parading around in their new stuff ahead of the season. Again, only 61 days away, and that started what was a really great weekend in terms of recruiting. Joshua Dobson would commit later that night, the 5-star defensive back out of the Charlotte area, and that would start the string of 3 more commitments for South Carolina over the course of the next couple days, with Davian Jones, Nate Carson, and Jaden Brody, as Carolina's class has certainly ticked up in these past couple days for 2027. I did ask the question at the beginning of the show, like, how much do you allow yourself to get excited about this kind of stuff, right? Because, again, we're in July. Early signing day isn't until December. A lot can happen between now and then. A nameless texter weighs in and says, I don't allow myself to enjoy anything with recruiting until these guys are officially signed to South Carolina. Nobody is loyal these days, and I can understand that feeling. Right now, typically, the majority of guys that do end up verbally committing to schools typically stay the course on that. It's a lot more of the higher profile guys, the 4 and 5 stars, the blue chips that, flip and decommit and recommit and all that kind of stuff. And that's what you end up kind of reading about. But I can understand where you're coming from with that, because we've almost kind of become numb to it at this point, that if somebody, hey, I'm committed to South Carolina, I can't wait to play for Beamer and all that kind of stuff, and then a month from now, like, actually I'm going to decommit and go somewhere else. You always say, okay, well, that school must have thrown a bag of money at them or something along those lines, which a lot of times that is the case. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, and everybody plays by the same rules when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I can understand the sentiment of like, hey, until they're actually on campus, I'm not going to get my hopes up. Right, because so much can happen between the verbal commitment and actually signing. Even when you sign on the dotted line, as we've seen, some of these guys don't make it through spring practice before they're transferring somewhere else. So, for some of you, it may be, hey, until they actually officially take the field for South Carolina in 2027 or 28 or 29 or whatever it is, I'm not going to get my hopes up. But for the moment, for the time being, if you allow yourself to enjoy it, it has been a very good couple days for South Carolina on the recruiting front. Again, we'll get into this more with Wes and Chris coming up in the 11 o'clock hours. They can give more in-depth details into all these new guys that have committed to South Carolina for the 2027 class. We're in the season of list, season of talking, and Pro Football Focus the other day put out their list. Or really, it's kind of a slow release. It happened over the course of a couple days, but they've officially gotten to all 50 returning players in college football for this upcoming season, and most of this is analytically based because, again, Pro Football Focus is a resource that we all use here to get the minute details of things. I was talking a little bit earlier about Lenore Seller's completion percentage going down about 5 points from year 1 to year 2, and I was looking at where his throws are at in areas of the field and things like that. And Pro Football Focus is a really great resource for those kind of things. Obviously, we do talk about Pro Football Focus grades, which those are a little more, I guess, subjective. Now, there is a process to make sure that people and their graders aren't just throwing out numbers willy-nilly. So, but it is, more not opinion-based, but something that can be more fluid, right? As opposed to the details of like, all right, here's exactly how many yards per contact this running back had, or here's the average depth of target for a wide receiver and things along those natures. So that's what I like to focus on more when it comes to Pro Football Focus, but they have their metrics, they have their grades. Obviously, the NFL uses these kind of things. I can attest to the fact that I sit behind a lot of NFL scouts at South Carolina games, and almost all of them have Pro Football Focus pulled up on their computers or tablets and stuff like that. So it is a valuable resource in terms of what those grades mean and what they do over there at PFF. But again, this is the 50 best players in college football ahead of the 2026 season. All these guys obviously returning from a season before. One Gamecock, only one Gamecock made this list. Dylan Stewart at number 20. The write-up says Stewart was their number 2 edge pass rusher and drops one spot after just an okay, quote-unquote, sophomore campaign. Still his body of work over his first 2 seasons, and freaky tools deserve a spot in the top 3 of this list. He has his 88 pressures since 2024 are second only to Colin Simmons among players who have played in the Power 4 each of the last 2 years. Has an elite PFF pass rush grade of 90.2. Improved his run defense grade to a 79, up from a 61.9 in year number 2 as a freshman, up from his freshman year, and has all the makings of a top 5 pick if he can bounce back as a junior. So again, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that he is on this list. I think the phrase "an okay sophomore season" is kind of an interesting one. When we talk about Dylan Stewart, because again, was year number 2 overall as great as year number 1? It wasn't, and there's a lot of factors and reasons for that, namely the fact that Dylan Stewart was dealing with an injury, particularly towards the back half of last year, and this is where I do want to give him a lot of credit, right? And especially with the way the season was trending for Carolina, they weren't really playing for anything and all that kind of stuff. There was concern. We answered phone calls about it and saw text messages and all that kind of stuff, like, oh man, here comes Dylan Stewart. He's probably going to sit out the back half of the season, and then he's going to transfer out, and he's going to be gone from Carolina forever. Well, that didn't happen. Not only did Dylan Stewart, he did miss some time. Not only did he finish out the season, even when South Carolina wasn't playing for anything, but he stuck around, right? Now, yes, Carolina did have to, make sure they made it worth his while when it came to funds and all that kind of stuff, but he didn't leave, right? This is going to be a guy that's going into his 3rd year here at Carolina, which in today's world of college football is certainly an unprecedented thing. But he stayed the course last year, even through the injuries and all that kind of stuff. And while the sack numbers are down a little bit, 6.5 in year number 1 to 4.5 in year number 2. Again, he did miss some time. That contributes to that as well. He still continued to have a very good effect on the game, even if he wasn't the one that was particularly getting to the quarterback, because guess what? He's still at the top of the scouting report and will be on the defense for South Carolina going into this year as well. But obviously the one thing that helped out Dylan Stewart so much in year number 1 was that presence on the other side, right? Kyle Kennard, who ended up being a NFL draft pick at the other edge spot and winning the Bronco Nagurski Award, was somebody that everybody had to account for, right? And it became very much a pick your poison situation with Carolina. It was like, all right, we can dedicate a tight end or a running back to, be an extra defender or chip, Kyle Kennard on the left side or Dylan Stewart on the right side. Well, whichever one we don't pick is probably going to be pressuring our quarterback and wreaking havoc on us. So, pick which side you want there. And I give credit because Brian Thomas Jr. did do a good job last year of playing that opposite role. He was not to the same degree as Kyle Kennard in terms of the same kind of threat, but he did a solid job, playing that other edge spot. But again, Kyle Kennard, what he came in here and did 1 year in Carolina was obviously unexpected and crazy, and that certainly helped out Dylan Stewart a lot. Now as time goes on and Stewart, again, is being projected as maybe a high pick or one of the first guys off the board coming up in next spring's NFL draft, he's always going to garner the most attention. And that brings up the question of, okay, who is going to be that person on the opposite side of him at that other edge spot that can play, hopefully, a Kennard type of role? And you got a lot of guys that have come in from the transfer portal, like a Caleb Herring, like a Drew Collins. Talk about Julian Walker coming in as a freshman with with a lot of hype. George Wilson returns for another year. Who is that guy, right? We kind of look at it and think maybe it could be Caleb Herring, and can they have that same effect that Kyle Kennard had that can potentially draw some attention away from Dylan Stewart to allow him to run a little bit more free. I still think most teams are still going to put most of their resources on the Dylan Stewart side and say, hey, if somebody else gets us, somebody else gets us. But we're not going to let number 6 come out there and destroy us by letting up on him too much. And if that's the case, that's fine, because he's still having an effect on the game, and he's still allowing that guy on the other side to eat when the opportunity obviously presents itself. But even with the attention that Stewart's going to get, we saw in year number 1 and some in year number 2 as well, even when he was getting doubled, even when he was getting chip blocked and things like that, he was still able to fight through contact. He was still able to go out there and have an effect on the quarterback. And if he wasn't sacking and putting pressure on him, flushing the pocket, those kind of things, or allowing somebody else to get the sack if Dylan Stewart moved him off the spot and those kind of things. So assuming he's fully healthy, now again, he's dealing with the injury, which isn't something we've been as highly concerned about, because if anybody doesn't need reps, Dylan Stewart will probably be the candidate for being one of those players. Here's hoping when the season gets here, he stays healthy the entire year, because you're going to need him to be healthy when it comes to, as I mentioned earlier with Michael Felder, the gauntlet of what you're going to be dealing with in the SEC. But even with that extra attention, I still expect him to go out there and have a profound effect on the game, even if it isn't getting sacks on, every single drop back for a quarterback and stuff like that. You're going to know 6 is there. And it's kind of one of those things that, like, all right, there was a interception thrown or something along those lines, picked off by Vakari Swain, let's say, or something like that. When you go back and watch the replay, that's because Dylan Stewart was pushing the right tackle, or the running back that was attempting to block him into the quarterback, and he had to throw the ball away quickly. Like those kind of things that don't show up on, the ESPN stat sheet that Pro Football Focus does account for. Those are the kind of the effects that you want to see Stewart have on the game if he's not out there getting sacks left and right, which we do hope he's going to have. And again, you don't know when you're going to have this kind of talent at edge rusher. There were so many comparisons being made to him and Clowney and all that kind of stuff. And look, Clowney is on his own level, but Dylan Stewart has had a really solid career here at South Carolina so far, and here's hoping he can wrap it up with a really good junior season, staying healthy the entire way through. And you hope you take advantage, right? That goes back to this whole thing we talk about with South Carolina going into the season. You have so much talent at so many of the key spots, at quarterback, at left tackle, at wide receiver, at edge rusher. You hope you can take advantage of it, because, again, you don't know when another Dylan Stewart's going to walk through your door. We can hope that the Julian Walkers of the world and things like that pan out to be just as good, if not better, but you don't know. You have a sure thing in Dylan Stewart. You know what he's capable of when he's healthy, and you hope that he goes out there and has a baller season and rides off into the NFL after this year, but that you benefit and take advantage of that season, in addition to the other guys at those particular spots that I just talked about, by making this season a step back in the right direction and getting yourself back to being something respectable, because last year at 4-8 was obviously not that. So, again, Dylan Stewart, the only one on Pro Football Focus's top 50 players going into the 2026 season. Could other Gamecock players have made the list? Maybe. We'll debate it on the other side. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here, flying solo on your Monday on The Game. right, welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the game. 61 days, guys. Only 61 days until we have South Carolina football back. Only 54, by the way, until week number 0. As I mentioned a little bit earlier with Michael Felder. You have that. That is the opening game, by the way, of week number 0 with North Carolina and TCU over in Dublin. ESPN game. Remember, TCU just came in and annihilated North Carolina after UNC got like the opening drive touchdown. Everybody's like, oh, man, Bill Belichick's going to run roughshod over college football. Yeah, that didn't happen. We'll see how your number 2 looks. But that's the headliner of the day. You also have North Carolina State, NC State, and Virginia later in that day as well. That was a game that was supposed to be in Brazil, if I remember correctly, that got moved back to states, and rightfully so. There's no reason those two teams need to play in Brazil. So a lot of good games to look forward to, or a lot of interesting games at least to look forward to on that day coming up on Saturday, August 29th. Again, 54 days away from now. But as we get closer to the season starting, we're going to be talking about plenty of lists, plenty of rankings, plenty of opinions of a lot of people in terms of who the best in college football are going to be going into the season. And right now we're looking at Pro Football Focus and their top 50 players going in to the college football season. Again, one Gamecock featured on this list with Dylan Stewart at number 20. Again, this is a lot more analytically based on grades and things of that nature that Pro Football Focus uses. And again, it's a valuable resource. Again, I think we all take the ratings themselves with a bit of a grain of salt, but in terms of the actual like breakdown of like depth, yardage, things like that, it's a really good resource that I enjoy using for research for this job and all that kind of stuff. So I do trust a lot of what Pro Football Focus says, and it's always interesting when they come up with these kind of lists that are more analytically based as opposed to opinion based. So as I mentioned, Dylan Stewart, the only Gamecock to make the list. So that means, guess what? Lenore Sellers didn't make the list. Well, how many quarterbacks did, or what quarterbacks did, I guess is the better question. Well, you have Julian Sayin, Dante Moore, Arch Manning, Trinidad Chambliss, CJ Carr, Darian Mensah, Jordan Mayava, and Sam Levitt, all quarterbacks that made this list for Pro Football Focus's top 50 returning players. And it's kind of, there's two sides of the coin here, because did all of these guys pretty much have better seasons than Lenore Sellers did a season ago? Yeah, they did. And obviously, Julian Sayin, quarterback from Ohio State, has a plethora of talent around him. We'll get to one of those guys who topped that list coming up here in a minute. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza won the national championships, not returning to college football as he was the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. But some of these other guys, Dante Moore and Trinidad Chambliss, guys like that, that were in the college football playoff a season ago. Sam Levitt led Arizona State to the college football playoff 2 seasons ago. So a lot of these guys having great seasons a year ago that netted them on this list. But I asked the question, when Lenore Sellers is playing his best football, as we saw at the end of the season 2 years ago, would you take any of these guys over him? Probably not, right? Now, you can split hairs like, all right, this guy's maybe a better thrower, this guy does this guy does that, but like, generally speaking, when Sellers is playing his best, he can be the best player in all of college football. The question is, can he be that this upcoming season, right? As I mentioned earlier, with the 61 days countdown, I got to talking about his completion percentage, which was right at about 61% last year, 60.8, but still, I rounded up to 61, as that was one of many numbers that dropped from a season ago. And again, we put so much of that on Mike Shula when it came to the lack of development, Sellers overthinking, not scheming things up the right way, the routes the receivers running, all that kind of stuff certainly played a contributing role into why Lenore Sellers had the struggles that he did a season ago. And now the biggest question going into this year is, can Kendall Briles re-unlock the version of Sellers that we saw 2 seasons ago? I have a lot of confidence that he can, right? And as we've talked about a lot, going back to when he was hired back in December, the scheme itself, the track record he has with quarterbacks, especially ones with similar skill sets like KJ Jefferson to what Lenore Sellers does, tells you this should probably be a lot better. Right now, there's a difference between saying it and doing it. You still got to go out there and execute, right? And I'm really hoping we don't see the bugs and the issues that plagued Sellers a season ago reemerge. I hope that Kendall Briles has, coached all that out of him. It's not in his head anymore and all that kind of stuff. But it is a wait and see type of approach. But if Kendall Briles can give us maybe even a better version of Sellers than what we saw 2 years ago in those final 6 games of the regular season, I would probably take him over any of these other guys on this list. And you also look at this as well, especially when you look at the Sayans, the Moores, Mannings, guys like that. Sellers has not worked with near the caliber of talent around him at receiver, at tight end. You had Rocket Sanders at running back 2 years ago, so that's a really good running back. But, I mean, outside of Nick Harbor, who, again, was not a 5-star coming out of high school as a wide receiver, he was an athlete, Sayan, Moore, Manning, Chambliss, these guys are working with 4 or 5 stars left and right around them at their disposal. Sellers hasn't, right? And that's not a knock on the talent that South Carolina has. It's just a statement of fact that in terms of what these guys were built to be coming out of high school, not quite the same. So in a way, even go back 2 years ago, Sellers was doing more with maybe a little bit less on the recruiting talent front, which I do think is a again nod to him and how good of a quarterback he is and what they were doing with Dow Loggins 2 seasons ago as the offensive coordinator. So here's hoping, again, Kendall Browse can unlock that and we see that version of Sellers that we saw back in 2024, because if we see that guy week in and week out, the sky's the limit for South Carolina. If your defense can play well like it has the past couple of years, and Sellers can be old Sellers again, then this team can accomplish a lot. And who knows, maybe even threaten for a college football playoff spot again. The first bar to clear is getting to a bowl game. Past that, who knows what can happen. But yeah, Sellers does make the list. Neither does Harbor. Neither does Jakari's Peak. I was maybe a little surprised by Jakari's Peak, considering the fact that he was the most sought-after transfer left tackle. But again, these are based off grades and all that kind of stuff. And I don't imagine he would have been that much farther down the list if they ended up going past 50. So if you're wondering, by the way, who is number 1 on the list, that's Jeremiah Smith. Does that shock you at all? Right? If I told you, if I polled 100 college football fans, let's say we're doing Family Feud style, right? Most in Family Feud, and I need to know what the opinion of 100 college football fans is in terms of who they think the best player in college football is. I would think well over half of them would probably say Jeremiah Smith, right? You can be the biggest Ohio State hater in the world, but you got to recognize what a talent that dude is, right? And I mean, it was said 2 years ago he could have been a first round pick, after his freshman season, right? The write-up from Pro Football Focus says Smith tops this list for the second straight year, joining Trevor Lawrence as the only player to do so. Over his first 2 college seasons, he led all wide receivers in PFF receiving grades, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Also leads all wide receivers in PFF wins above average over that span. He's a generational talent at the position who'll have NFL teams tripping over themselves to draft him in 2027. And I don't think a single lie was told, in that, right? And obviously, Ohio State is an extremely, extremely talented team, and they've had good receiving cores for a while. But, this dude is on another level. This dude is different. Last year, just numbers down a little bit. Now they did, I guess, technically play less games because they didn't play for the national championship this past year, so that could have contributed to it. But roughly 2,500 yards and 27 touchdowns in 2 years of college football. Who knows what this guy's going to be able to accomplish this upcoming year. Julian Sayin going to his second year at quarterback, and the chemistry those guys have. And we haven't really talked about college football favorites to win the national championship this year, but for good reason, and a lot of it to do with Jeremiah Smith on the offense. Ohio State's probably going to be one of those teams that you're going to have to go through to win this entire thing. And again, you don't have to like Ohio State to appreciate what a rare and special talent Jeremiah Smith is. So no surprise that he ends up at the top of this list as number 1 for PFF's top returning players in college football. If you're wondering about the top 5, Leonard Moore, the cornerback for Notre Dame, comes in at number 2. Colin Simmons, the edge rusher that was compared to, Keelan Stewart was compared to in their write-up of him, comes in at number 3. Julian Sayin, quarterback for Ohio State, coming in at number 4. And Malachi Toney coming in at number 5, the wide receiver for Miami that really lit the world on fire last year and grabbed a lot of people's attention for all the things that he did a season ago. And as a true freshman, nonetheless, and was a big part of why Miami was able to get all the way and play for the national championship against Indiana. So there you go. I encourage you to check out the entire list. A lot of names on there. Carolina plays a handful of them this upcoming season, so it kind of speaks volumes to again, how tough the schedule is going to be for South Carolina in 2026. Speaking of the schedule, by the way, we're almost done previewing all of our regular season opponents. Up next, Georgia in the penultimate week of the regular season. I'll tell you about the Dogs and what that game's going to be like coming up in late November, coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head flying solo with you here on your Monday on the Game. Almost done with our opponent previews. Been doing this for about the past 2 weeks, taking an opponent each day, diving into what we know at this point in time. Also talked to a few experts along the way that have more intimate knowledge of these teams. Believe it or not, as we get into the University of Georgia, I tried 3 of my contacts, the people I used to work with and stuff like that, all busy today. So I'm going to have to handle this one by myself. That's all right. Full disclosure, for those that are not aware, I did go to the University of Georgia, so I have more intimate knowledge of this program than most others around the SEC outside of South Carolina, of course. But I will say this. As much as I know about the University of Georgia and am an alumni, I do try and be as objective as I can. I know, some people like to poke fun at that. Wes always likes to remind people that went to the University of Georgia as if I have some kind of crazy bias. I try not to be. So when I talk about a team like this that is really good, hey, they've won 2 national championships in the past 5 years. Don't forget that. I don't say that from a side of favoritism. I say that from just trying to be as down the middle as I possibly can be in terms of previewing what this program is and what to expect when they play South Carolina coming up in the next to last week of the regular season. For one, I think both sides are glad this game's back on the schedule. And, kind of reading into the people I know that still cover Georgia, fans that I know and all that kind of stuff, I think everybody's excited, right? If nothing else, from the fact that it's your closest team here. For Carolina, at least, it's about a 3-hour drive to get to Athens. Georgia, it's pretty comparable to like Auburn. Auburn is just over the state line into Alabama, so you're looking at probably about a 3-hour drive from Athens to there. So still a opponent that's in close proximity. Obviously, Carolina and Georgia have a long history from years and years battling in the SEC East. So it's been weird these past couple years. They've not seen each other on the schedule. So I think we're all excited to have them back on the schedule annually now that they're going to be crossover opponents. So you'll get your trip to Athens. They'll come here this upcoming year, and certainly looking forward to all that. And I don't think there's no sugarcoating this. This is the toughest game on your schedule, based on what we know about teams right now. And yeah, you're going to play Oklahoma, you're going to play A&M, you're going to play Alabama. Those are all playoff teams. This game, Georgia in late November, as it sits right now, until proven otherwise, is going to be the toughest game on your schedule. And it wraps up it almost wraps up, because it comes in the next week, what is the gauntlet of the back half of the regular season. Tennessee, Oklahoma, A&M, Arkansas, not as tough, but then Georgia and Clemson. So I don't know what shape Carolina's going to be at that point in time, but you're going to be kind of put through the ringer for a couple weeks, and you're going to need to be the best version of yourself if you want to take down this Georgia team in that last week of the regular season. Let's flash back, though, to 2023. Carolina's on the road early in the season. They're leading 14-3 at halftime. TJ Sanders is having maybe the game of his life. Juice Wells got hurt. I forget if it was in the because he scored the touchdown. It was in the first half of that game, and then we never saw him again in a Gamecock uniform. But things were going well, and then the wheels kind of came off in the second half. Georgia ends up winning that one 24-14. And that was not a great Carolina team, because they went 5-7 that year. But that was a statement to make for how you played in the first half of that game. You just couldn't do it for an entire 60 minutes. But Carolina is one of the last teams. Alabama won there this past year, but prior to that, Georgia hadn't lost at home since they lost to South Carolina back in 2019. And it got me thinking, and I went back and looked. Here are the teams and where they were ranked that have beaten Georgia since Carolina last beat them back in 2019. Number 2, Alabama. Number 8, Florida. Number 4, and this is regular season, by the way. I'm not counting postseason. Number 4, Alabama. Number 16, Ole Miss. Number 17, Alabama. If those teams didn't make the playoff, they were all college football playoff contenders. That's the caliber of team you have to be to beat Georgia in the regular season. Yeah, SEC championship, bowl games, playoff, all that's a different story. I'm talking about regular season, because that's what this matchup is. A week, 12, be your 11th game, matchup in the regular season is the Georgia team that you're getting. And again, since beating them, pulling that upset back in 2019, all those teams ranked inside the top 17 that beat Georgia in the regular season. Could Carolina be there? I certainly hope so, right? And we hope that Beamer's prediction of, hey, in November we're going to be watching the, playoff ranking show to see where we're at and all that kind of stuff. I hope it comes true, and I hope this is one of the best matchups of the entire season, because I know Georgia's going to be good, right? That's just kind of a given on a year-in-year-out basis. We just don't know where Carolina's going to be at that point in time, but you're going to need to be the best version of yourself. And all these key players that we're talking about playing their best football to compete in this game, right? The last time Georgia was here, they ran you out of the building back in 2022, and that ended up at the end of the year being one of Beamer's better teams. So you know what you're going to have to do to match up with a team like that and be playing your best football late in the season. It does benefit. We talk about November Beamer. It wasn't the case as much last year, but Carolina typically plays their best football late in the season. So we'll see if that benefits them when Georgia rolls into town coming up in late November. We obviously know that Gunnar Stockton is going into his second year as a starter. He started the bowl game the year before after playing the second half of the SEC championship, and he had his ups and downs early in the season. Some good, some okay, but he really hit his stride late in the year. Great games against Texas, played well against Alabama in the SEC championship. Obviously, he's a dual threat, can use his feet, always give me a presence, not afraid of contact, going to put his head down and welcome it. So he's a tough guy to bring down. Very much like a Haynes King was at Georgia Tech the past couple of years. Like he's a not to use a pun here, a bulldog of a player that you're going to have to account for and be on your P's and Q's when it comes to defending him, not only with his arm, but with what he does with his legs as well. No surprise, of course, Georgia lost a lot of players to the draft this past year, 8 of them getting drafted, not to mention tons of guys being undrafted free agents and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of talent that left this team from a season ago, but Georgia's one of those few teams out there that still hangs on to a lot of their guys, from high school through their college careers. Not all of them, some of them do leave, but Georgia still is able to do a lot in terms of developing talent from out of high school, much like South Carolina does, actually, and keep those guys around for a while. So they didn't hit the transfer portal insanely hard this offseason. They brought in a few guys. You lose Zachariah Branch, who was a good receiver for you to the Atlanta Falcons. They bring in Isaiah Canyon coming over from Georgia Tech. He's a tall threat that you can use on the outside there at wide receiver. Brought in a couple of depth pieces at offensive line, running back. The most notable, I guess, get they would have gotten out of the transfer portal is a name that we know here very well, that being Khalil Barnes, the defensive back from Clemson. He had the pick 6 against Carolina, 2023, I guess, when Clemson came here. But a guy that's played a lot of good football for Clemson over the past couple of years and now is taking his talents to the University of Georgia. But for the most part, it's a lot of the same guys that returned from a good defense a year ago. Gabe Harris, Elijah Griffin, Chris Cole, Raylan Wilson, Ellis Robinson IV, KJ Bolden, who was one of the top players in Pro Football Focus's top 50 returning players in college football. So a lot of the names that you know on defense. Again, you have Gunnar Stockton coming back at quarterback, Nate Frazier, Lucky Lawson at tight end. So again, it's going to be a similar looking Georgia team in a lot of ways to a year ago, even though they lost a lot of talent to the NFL. They were 9th in S&P Plus returning production this offseason per Bill Connolly of ESPN. So again, it's a team with a lot of talent that kept a lot of talent that should be pretty good once again this upcoming season. Again, you get them late in November, which, by the way, feels very weird, right? For the entirety of most of my life, watching South Carolina and Georgia play was always a September game, usually week number 2 or 3 of the regular season. It's either 1,000 degrees in Columbia or like 95 degrees in Georgia when this game was being played, or in Athens, Georgia when this game was being played, and singing in November. Now, when I was in school in 2017, Carolina did come to Sanford Stadium in November that year. I remember I had my hood up the entire game because it's kind of a light breeze the entire time, and that could be something we're in for this time around as well. Again, just weird vibes of seeing these two teams play so late in the season, but it is what it is. Again, glad this game's back on the regular calendar year in and year out now as annual crossover opponents, and we'll see how Carolina matches up with, again, what should be a Georgia team likely in the college football playoff hunt by the time the end of the season does roll around. So that's 11 opponents we have previewed so far. There's one remaining. We will get to the Clemson Tigers coming up tomorrow to wrap up the regular season for South Carolina and opponent previews. But coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 2. A couple other things happened in the kind of sports world this past weekend. One of them was a wedding. We'll talk about it on the other side. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Recapping the weekend that was long weekend, 4th of July. Happy birthday, America, 250 years. A lot of cool stuff, by the way, for America 250 going on. We watched, like they did the thing in Nashville with the concerts and Tim McGraw, Boyz II Men, with Nick Jonas, a lot of Reba McEntire, a lot of cool people there that performed. That was fun to watch, and obviously great fireworks shows going on all around here. We went to the Peach Festivals we do each and every 4th of July out there in Gilbert. That's always fun, even though it was 10,000 degrees outside. We only hung out there for about an hour, but always fun to get to go out there and do that. But before the weekend, or I guess when the weekend started, before the 4th of July, we had what might be the biggest wedding, at least in pop culture in a while, between Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce in Madison Square Garden, no less. Now, there was no TV cameras for this. In fact, I don't think anybody was allowed to take photos. Apparently, she made them sign NDAs and all this kind of stuff. We have seen, of course, like people that attended, sharing photos of themselves before going, and a lot of NFL players, a lot of people involved in sports and entertainment. Dean Blandino was there, the replay guy for, is it ESPN? One of those, or Fox, one of them that does their NFL coverage. So who's who of guests, obviously going to this big wedding that I'm sure in time we'll eventually see photos of and all that kind of stuff. But here's my thought. Here's my thought coming away from the weekend, because like Swifties are obviously obsessed with anything having to do with Taylor Swift. Our own Colin Taylor, who used to do this show with me, a big Swiftie himself. In fact, he actually appeared when they did the Taylor Swift documentary on Disney Plus. I think it came out last year. He and his wife actually appear in the thing very briefly, but still they're in it, which I think speaks to how big of fans they are. But I thought about this coming away from the weekend because, again, it was in Madison Square Garden. You saw the pictures and videos, them blocking off the city streets and stuff like that. And apparently they built this little venue inside of the arena. So that made MSG, which is already referred to as the world's most famous arena, important to a whole nother group of people, because there's a lot of Swifties out there that don't care about sports, right? They are into Taylor Swift and things like that and don't care about, what's happening in the sports world. I thought Madison Square Garden missed out on an opportunity to, maybe today or tomorrow, a couple days after the wedding happened, if you left everything up, whatever structures they built in there, the seats, the little, the altar and all that kind of stuff, if you just left all that up and told people, hey, for, I don't know, $100, we'll let you in MSG and you could walk around where Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got married, I think a lot of people would do it. I think MSG would make a ton of money if they decided to do that. Now, to my knowledge, they have not, but I think that was a missed opportunity where they could have, again, because knowing the Swift fandom, there's a lot of them that would probably fly from all over the world for the opportunity to stand where Taylor Swift stood when she got married. You know what I mean? Again, missed opportunity there by Madison Square Garden, in my opinion, for not doing that. But hey, congratulations to the couple. Hopefully they're happily married. Again, they're not going to be out of the public spotlight, right? I mean, Travis Kelce, what's going to be playing likely is last year, right? We all think, going into this year, and then he'll be transitioning into TV, much like his brother, more likely than not, and Taylor Swift will continue to be the biggest pop star in the world. So as private as the wedding was, we'll know plenty about their marriage and relationship going forward as we have for these past couple of years. All right, that's enough of the Taylor Swift talk. I know there's a portion of you that are probably banging your head on the steering wheel in just me mentioning the wedding from over the weekend. Let's talk about something else that happened over the weekend, that being one of my favorite 4th of July traditions, that being the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest.
Nathan's Famous 4th of July Hot Dog Eating Contest presented by Polymark. And this is the 18-time champion of the world with 66 Nathan's Famous hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. Joey Chestnut!
Death, taxes, and Joey Chestnut winning the mustard yellow belt on Coney Island on the 4th of July. These are the guarantees in life. And as you just heard there, once again, winning the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest with 66 dogs and buns, down a little bit. He only had 17 and a half last year. Maybe age is catching up with him, I don't know. But still continues to be the man. That is his 18th title since 2017. Of course, was not able to compete 2 years ago because of that debate with the company that had the alternative meats that apparently the Major League Eating didn't have a partnership with. Then he lost in 2015 as well to Matt Stoney. But for the most part, this has been his contest for the better part of 20 years. And I look forward to every 4th of July just seeing how many hot dogs he can end up downing, as once again pulled off the victory this past Saturday out there at Coney Island. So that was always very, very cool to see. Hopefully you all had a great 4th of July weekend. We'll get back into that conversation and everything going on with Gamecock recruiting after they had a huge weekend with the holiday this past weekend, with Wes and Chris coming up next as we get in to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, as your Monday post-long weekend rolls along here on The Game. All right, 11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris starting a new week, coming off of the long weekend. Happy belated 4th. Everybody got their fingers intact, all 10 digits still together. We all good?
All 10 are here.
No firework mishaps?
Nope. Left that to the professionals, man.
Describe professionals.
The just people in the town that say, hey, we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of the town's money and blast off rockets.
Well, to be fair, professional can also mean like your uncle that brings all the good fireworks that he bought from like the roadside stand. He's like, I've done this for 30 years, and he lights them all himself. Like, that also can be a professional.
True.
And you get the backup Terry.
Yep, backup Terry.
I think, actually, interestingly enough, we actually looked this up this weekend, guys, because we checked out the fireworks show on Lake Murray, which, if you've never seen, is great. If you're out at Dreer Island, if you're out near Spence Islands on the lake, or if you find a spot, really, you can see both, because obviously they're in the sky, but they do a fantastic job. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Munnerlyn Pyrotechnics, they would be the experts, Tyler. Not Captain Munnerlyn.
I was about to ask if there was any relation.
No relation that I know of, but Munnerlyn.
A great marketing tie-in there, though.
This weekend.
Yeah. I was going to say that there's a spokesperson if you need one for that.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
That'd be a good tie-in.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A great weekend from recruiting front. We'll certainly get into it. As when we last left you, we were obviously talking about the Josh Dobson commitment for Carolina, which was huge. And on Friday, I did ask Chris the buy or sell of the line being at 1.5, and he confidently bought the over in terms of other commitments Carolina would get. And we certainly got plenty more of that over the weekend, which we'll get into in a moment. But first, guys, we got to get to our 61 days until countdown trivia question. Here's the funny thing, right? So I asked you guys the question about, hey, do you have any 61s you can think of? And you guys said, no, none that come to mind. Kevin Miller on Thursday hit me up. He was listening to the show and said, hey, I've got a spreadsheet of all these numbers for Carolina football, because he's also doing his countdown series that typically features the players each and every day. He also didn't have a 61. So this may be the hardest number to dig and find somebody with in all of Carolina football.
Tyler, can I play Wes's game?
You want to guess?
From the other day. Yes.
Okay.
Wes, can we do a quick installment of guys naming dudes? And see if we can. I've got a guy in my head. And, dude, I really think you might have a chance to get this one.
I don't think I do. I do.
Yeah. Let me give you a slight hint.
Okay.
Week at summer camp, you and I covered 9 Beamer football camps this summer. And, every now and then we'll see somebody milling around. Yeah, who is that guy? I don't know. Who is it? And we'll try to figure it out. Does that give you a hint at all or no? You still lost?
I mean, somebody popped to mind, but I didn't know if it... 61? Really?
61.
Okay, I mean, I'm just going to say it and hope that I'm on the right track here. Was Matt Razor 61?
No, that's not it. That's not it.
Different guy that was... We did see Matt Razor.
We did see Matt Razor. That was...
Who else did we see?
Awesome.
Who else did we see?
Oh, former walk-on. Matt Razor, I believe, wore 68. And at one point, he was moved to guard from the defensive line. I cannot... For some reason, I feel like he wore 94 as a D lineman, but I could be dead wrong. But he wore 68 as an O lineman. But no, that's not it. You're going to kick yourself when I tell you this one.
Oh, God.
No doubt.
Hold on.
Yep.
Give me 5 seconds. Former walk-on. I got to think that this is is this Spurrier era?
Yeah. No. Well, no. Actually, it's Muschamp era. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm out of time. Just give it to me.
Cameron Johnson.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Remember we ran into him at camp?
Yep. I think he's coaching over at Dutch Fork these days.
That's right. Yep.
No, you guys, I guess, aren't always 100% on the same wavelength then. It was impressive what happened on Thursday, though, where you guys were thinking of the exact same guy for 65, 64, whatever number that was.
Ryan Broadhead.
Yes.
Yep.
Very impressive.
And Tyler, I told you, I was like, I do think he's got a pretty good shot at this one.
Yeah,
and he did. So
he did.
Maybe we keep this thing going.
Yeah.
I already have a 60 in mind.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Do you know who I'm thinking of, Chris?
Yeah, I do.
All right. What's your question, Tyler?
All right. So for those that need the update, Wes is leading right now 8 to 7.5 after having a phenomenal week last week. So you closed the gap. You passed him. Still neck and neck with 61 days to go.
Tyler, let me interject real quick and just tell the people out there that I'm a little bit offended that Chris in our group text called me out last week and said that I cheated on the North Carolina game. So I just want to put that out into the ether and let the people know that Chris did not take me getting that one right too well.
No, I didn't. I was disappointed in myself, and I took it out on you.
Yeah.
So
All right.
full credit. I don't think you cheated. I just said that. You know, sometimes when you're angry, you say things you don't mean. So.
All right. I'll take that as an apology. What you got, Tyler?
All right. So the number 61 brings us to the first game of the Beamer era. The first pick six of the Beamer era was a 61-yarder by who?
I got it.
Can we write it down, Tyler?
Yeah. You know what? Text it to me.
Can I write it down and Chris can say it?
Sure. That'll work.
All right. I'm not 100%, guys, but a name popped to mind. So we can both get credit.
Yes, if you both get right, I'll give you both credit.
Tyler, you can see I've written it down.
All right, hold it up again. Let me make sure I can.
Chris, say it.
All right, Chris, go ahead.
Every time I'm very confident that I lose, but I feel like Jordan Birch.
All right, Wes also has Jordan Birch. And let's see if you guys are right.
Wide receivers in now with a fresh set of downs at the Carolina 41-yard line. Blitz by Carolina. Goodtrenick throws it outside. It's picked off. It's Birch. Birch inside the 50. Open it up, big man. At the 20, 15, 10. Jordan Birch, are you kidding me?
61 yards, scored the final touchdown of the 46-0 victory over Eastern Illinois to open up the Beamer era. So, yes, Jordan Birch with a 61-yard pick six to close that game out.
Let me say the thing I remember about that play, too, boys. Jordan Birch was hauling to the end zone. Like, we saw all of that. I mean, what was Jordan running? Like, 4.4? Like, there was always – he was kind of one of those guys that was a little bit like Clowney, where you would hear these crazy stories of his athletic feats, and Jordan turned on the Jets on that one.
Yeah, that was again, I think I said this the other day. We were reminiscing a little on it. West, second worst football team I've ever seen.
Yes.
I mean, they were I hate to say
Eastern Illinois, not Carolina.
Yeah.
Eastern Illinois, obviously.
Was Charleston Southern the other one?
That's right. They were number one by a good margin. But Eastern Illinois, I was looking through. They were 0 for 9 on third down. They had 109 total yards during the game. 2 picks. Rough. And their coach, who I would imagine he's probably not there anymore, but super nice guy, made time for us on the show. It was awesome, but that was a bad football team. It was not like an awe-inspiring performance by South Carolina. We all remember that, but despite that, they still won 46-0.
Adam Cushing was the head coach at that point in time. It was his third and final season. He had a collective record of 3-26 in those 3 years at Eastern Illinois. You guys want to take a guess at what he's doing right now?
I don't know.
Is he still in college football?
He is still in college football.
Okay. All right.
Probably like an off-field guy somewhere or something.
Defensive coordinator at East Tennessee State.
Chris, you want to take a guess?
No clue. Nope.
He's the offensive line coach and recruiting coordinator at Texas A&M.
What the?
Yeah, so after he, I'm assuming, got fired at Eastern Illinois, he was the Duke O-line coach for 2 seasons and then followed Elko over to A&M.
Okay.
So he's probably making more there than he was at Eastern Illinois, I would imagine.
Yes. I'm also learning that teams still have recruiting coordinators.
I'm assuming that's what RGC stands for.
Run game coordinator.
Or, okay, run game coordinator. Sorry. Not recruiting coordinator, run game coordinator.
Eastern Illinois was actually 8-3 in 2023, and then they have fallen off a cliff once again.
Well, they got better for a moment.
For a moment. A brief moment. Oh, good for Coach Cushing.
Yeah,
that's
good
nice
for him.
guy.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Hey, he kind of, fell upward, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't think he's getting a head coach job again anytime soon.
He earned that. I wouldn't even say falling upward. He earned it.
Yeah. Again, I think you're making more as the A&M offensive line coach than whatever you were making there at Eastern Illinois as the head coach. But yeah, first pick six of the Beamer era, Jordan Burch, 61 yards for the 46-0 shutout of the Panthers back in 2021.
Tyler, let me say real quick, I keep cutting you off, but excellent production quality there by having, I like how we have the plays to play right after we say it.
When I can find it.
That's, let me just say, it's an excellent touch.
Thank you. When I can find it, I try and incorporate it as much as possible because I think it adds ambiance to the segment itself.
Yes, for sure.
So, again, big weekend for South Carolina on the recruiting front. We'll get into the new names that are committed for the 2027 class. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here in the game.
All right, Tyler's talking about new names. I'll tell you what's not a new name around here. It's Integrated Media. We'll tell you about them every single day. 803-948-8327, integratedmediainc.com for more information about all their great services and all the things they can do at your home, wherever you are around the Midlands. They've been to my house. They've been to Chris's. For me, it was about, kind of more business stuff, like making sure the internet was running great, making sure I had Ethernet in the home office when we were doing those GC live shows or having to stream or hop on Zoom meetings. If you work from home, that might be something you want to look into for your home and making sure that you have Wi-Fi from one side of the house all the way to the other and have that great connection. Or it might be for the fun stuff. It might be for watching football on a brand new TV, surround sound, turning that extra room in your home into a full home theater system. If any of that sounds of interest to you, hit up our friends at Integrated Media today, 803-948-8327.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be going to University of South Carolina.
And then lastly, I want to thank all my friends and my family for coming out here supporting me. And without them, I don't know where I'd be today. I'm glad I do this today. This is my company. 3 to 4 years, I've been taking my talents to University of South Carolina.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on your Monday here on the game. And that was just the highlights of the weekend from Gamecock recruiting. Again, when we were last with you on Thursday, we talked a lot about Joshua Dobson, who had committed on Wednesday night as the 5-star cornerback playing his final year of high school football up in the Charlotte area. And we were hoping that was going to be the first of many dominoes to fall for South Carolina as the weekend wore on. That ended up, of course, being the case. The three voices you heard there, Davion Jones, Nate Carson, and Jaden Brody, also all end up committing to South Carolina. Starting off the month of July, really you can't ask for anything better than what Carolina was able to do on the recruiting front, guys.
Yeah, they got momentum right now, guys, and all of a sudden they've actually moved into the top 25. So I think we knew if they could go on some type of run, you could make a big move up the rankings. And this has been, it's been a class with some ups and downs. It's been a class where they had some momentum early, and then they missed on some guys, and we started to hear, hey, schools are just really hammering South Carolina on 4 and 8, and what happened last season, and Beamer's hot seat talk and all this stuff that goes along with that. And then, they kind of lost some guys who were already committed to the class as well. And so I think you looked at this run going into the summer and you said, like, can they land some of these top targets? And we always, Chris, kind of identified that final weekend in terms of OVs as like, hey, can they close on a Josh Dobson? Can you close on a Nate Carson, Davion Jones? That's 3 guys right there who were in for that final OV weekend. They also got Ivion Lewis, who was in for that weekend and went ahead and he didn't, wait too long, just went ahead and flipped from Kentucky. So you're talking about 4 out of 5 on the final weekend in terms of landing them, and just all of a sudden you take momentum into what is now a recruiting dead period.
Yeah, and I think it really started later June for South Carolina, right? You saw the flip of Ivy. Like, everybody was looking to this week as a key week, but they actually started getting some traction later last month. You pick up Ivion Lewis as a 4-star flip from Kentucky. You get Kelvin Millington as a big corner, a 4-star corner that the Gamecocks wanted. You get him in the boat. You get Jackson Ross, the priority, in-state linebacker from Hammond School, right there at the end of June. You get James Ross and Clayton Lee on the offensive line mid to late June. Get a couple of high school takes to kind of start rounding out that high school class, and then these guys. And you're right, that was a big final weekend. We always talk about, what is best. Do you kind of either want to get the first visit so you can get guys locked down nowadays, or you want to get that last visit. And the proof's in the pudding that South Carolina was able to get some things done on that last weekend because they got Lewis, they got Carson, they got Jones, they got Dobson. The only one they didn't get was Marquise Evans, who's from the state of Alabama, ended up committing to Auburn, which I think was kind of the expected outcome, but still you take a swing and see what happens. And now you get into July and you had 4 straight days, 4 straight commitments. Jaden Brody did not take an official visit to South Carolina that last weekend, but interestingly, he was on campus on, I think, that Friday working out at camp, and the staff decided to offer, and things progressed very quickly there. So you're right, Wes, number 25 now nationally. If you're looking at the SEC rankings, number 10, and obviously in a 16-team league, you're not in the top half. But I do think you're starting to see a little bit of South Carolina strategy play out. And then obviously you knew they wanted Josh Dobson and Davion Jones, Nate Carson. These are 3 guys that they've been recruiting for literally years. And then Brody as kind of a late bloomer who they decided to offer and prioritize, and they were able to land him too. You've now got 17 high school commitments. You can be pretty choosy with your remaining spots, and you can play the long game. You look at some of the guys that they did miss on already, And there's plenty of evidence that, some of those recruitments aren't over, right? Just as South Carolina's had some difficulties on the trail with some misses this summer because of last season and Shane Beamer's, status, a projection of maybe some instability, you really have an opportunity to turn that around and solidify the guys that you have and then go make a run at some others. Trey Segarra from Burns is one we've talked about. Fred Ards, the edge from Orlando, Florida, who's committed to Texas A&M that at one point South Carolina led for. These are guys that just want to see, hey, can South Carolina win this season? And if they can, those are a couple guys that are going to have an opportunity to go grab and continue moving up in the rankings. But, nowadays, guys, with high school takes, you want to make sure they're guys that can come in and actually help you. And you look at some of these guys that they've gotten, I think there'll be different levels to when they contribute. But the staff really likes all these players, and they were priorities for all of them. So really, really good week last week.
And when you look at the On3 and Rivals rankings in terms of how they view South Carolina's class, 3 of those 4 guys are in your top 4 of guys committed so far, with Dobson Jones and Carson John Archer, the defensive lineman that committed back in April, the only one that kind of breaks that up in terms of the top 4. So 3 of your headliners of this class are all, coming in the matter of a couple days. You guys have been covering recruiting for a very long time. Does this run compare to anything, any other time that you can think of where that many guys of that high caliber committed in a short period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's happened. Like, recruiting tends to kind of follow these trends for whatever reason, where you'll have a run of guys. I mean, I can't imagine. Maybe, Chris, you can think of a specific example, but the just pure quality. I would say, especially when you're just talking about the rankings, like the ratings, to land Dobson, Davion Jones, and Nate Carson 3 days in a row, like, I mean, that's a pretty elite run right there if you're just looking at how highly rated all 3 of those guys are. So, like, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but that part of it is pretty rare. And, just the fact that those are 3 guys South Carolina's been recruiting for a long, long time, man. Like, just a little bit of an old school recruiting there in terms of just building the relationships. And yeah, I'm sure NIL was a big factor too, but, there had to be a comfort level. You had to be able to show that you were going to be able to develop guys. And, this certainly gives them exactly what they wanted going into July, which is a pretty quiet kind of month in terms of recruiting. And then now it really, the attention turns to, can you go win a bunch of games in the fall? And, I think they will keep this class together if they do that, and I think they will add some really talented players if they can do that too. So it really all comes down to putting the team out there that these recruits want to see when South Carolina lines up. I mean, we were getting very, very close, boys. So that to me is the biggest factor in this whole thing moving forward.
Yeah, July is typically kind of it is a slower month, right? It's really the only month of the year where college football is as close to a standstill as you can get because it's a dead period. So coaches are not on the road, prospects are not visiting, there's not as much going on with the team. It's the one month of the year where the coaches are actually getting some time away from the office. Camps are over, official visits are over. You're, getting some time off before the grind of preseason camp. But it just worked out to where, South Carolina at the end of June, it had that final OV weekend. And then you had some guys that were ready to decide, right? So it ended up being a big positive because you were able to recapture some of that momentum on the trail. And Tyler, to your point, I don't know if I can think of a time off the top of my head, that is, where, South Carolina gets 4 commitments 4 days in a row. And not just 4 commitments, but 4, very high level commitments, a couple 4-stars, a 5-star, you don't see that very often. You certainly see runs in, the spring or in the month of June during official visit season where there'll be a week where you get multiple commitments, but it's not very often, if ever, that you hey, you got 4 decisions lined up 4 days in a row and you get all the guys. So it certainly has rosied the outlook for people. And it's not just about the PR, right? If South Carolina would have wanted to get more guys on their commitment list so people can look at it and say, okay, they've got X number of commitments and they got a couple more 4-stars, They could have done that early. The priority has been, to your point, Wes, like go out, play the long game, show progress on the field, because as we've discussed, there is some internal optimism with this team in 2026 that you can go out and field a good team. Don't rush it. Try to sign the Josh Dobsons and Davion Jones and Nate Carsons of the world, absolutely. But don't start reaching for guys because you've missed on some others. And they had a really good run in these last few days. I think the activity will now slow as we get into July, but then it'll at some point kick back up again as we get into the season. There's some guys that are on other programs' commitment list right now that you will absolutely see pop up for a game at Williams-Brice Stadium this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I think important to point out, too, a stretch like this also maybe hasn't happened before, at least in recent memory, because Dobson literally as like your headliner is the highest ranked recruit of the Beamer era. So highest ranked commitment of this era. So I think when you have a guy like that, it just, I think adding elite high school players is more important than it's ever been because of the way the roster building is constructed. Like the kind of middle tier high school guys, we are seeing schools kind of say, look, we can just go into the portal as opposed to bringing someone in who wants to be paid and them riding the bench for a year or two while they develop. If you are a way under the radar recruit and you're kind of not commanding a lot of money, those guys are very valuable in high school recruiting as well. But in terms of truly elite play day one type players, I mean, Dobson is as good as it gets. Like, that's a position where South Carolina's got some upperclassmen this year that will be moving on for next year, and it just sets up perfectly for Dobson to slide right into a impact spot.
More on Carolina's big recruiting week, and including Dobson clarifying a comment he made the other day that did have some people concerned with that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler was Chris with you on your Monday here on the game. Again, recapping what was a very, very impressive weekend for Carolina on the recruiting front, starting with Josh Dobson all the way back on Wednesday, committing, being the headliner of the class, and again, one of the top recruits of the entire Beamer era. But he did have a bit of a comment that got people a little sideways when he committed almost a week ago, saying, I think it's long from over, obviously, until I sign the dotted line. But for now, I'm really 1,000% committed to the Cox. Obviously, that got people upset. He did clarify those comments on Twitter over the weekend. He said, the reporter asked me how I felt now that the recruiting process was over. And my response was that it's far from over because still have to make it official by signing in December. And I kind of understand where the confusion comes from, but also can understand how people would freak out about that, because in today's day and age of college sports and college recruiting, 5 months is a long time. And as we talked about when he committed on Wednesday, that doesn't mean those schools are going to go away and leave him alone. A&M, Michigan, all those other schools are going to continue to try and sway him to flip his commitment to them over the course of the next 5 months. So nothing's guaranteed until they are signing on the dotted line in December.
Yeah, for sure. And I think here's the other thing, Tyler. For one, you are talking about a 17 to 18-year-old kid answering a question on the fly. Mm-hmm. So I kind of put this in the category of multiple things can be true at once. Like, I think Josh went on in that tweet to say, like, I was more referring to the timeline. Like, hey, it literally is a long time until signing day. But, I mean, I think everybody knows at this point that much like these prospects we're talking about being flipped to South Carolina, paying attention to the season, Josh, I'm sure, is going to be paying attention to making sure that South Carolina has the season they need, that Beamer, is stable, that this hot seat talk disappears and all that stuff as well. So, I don't think you can get too fired up about stuff like that, man. Like that is just the nature of the beast at this point. I firmly believe, like, hey, if South Carolina has a season that they need, that they want, that Josh Dobson will be a part of this signing class. But I think you see recruits being a little bit more and more open about stuff like that. And but also we got to give a little bit of grace about the fact that you are standing there with reporters all around you in a loud room, and he just maybe didn't quite articulate exactly what he meant when he gave that answer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think two things that stand out, and one is what you just said, that there's a little more openness nowadays with this process. You talk to recruits, and, for instance, a recruit could put out a graphic saying, my recruitment shut down. I mean, heck, we saw a guy flip from Ole Miss right after shutting down his recruitment, flips to Colorado, and then flips back to Ole Miss within 24 hours. And that's, even nowadays, that's a little bit of an outlier. But you'll see guys say, hey, I'm committed, and then their first interview, they'll say, hey, I'm still going to take more visits. That used to happen. I feel like it happens even more now. With Josh, even if he had not said that, and whatever he meant by it, I agree with your assessment, Wes, just kind of in the moment, just, not necessarily a misspeak, but it's just kind of maybe misconstrued a little bit. Even if he had not said that, we would all be sitting here this season, especially if things don't go as well as everybody hopes on the field for South Carolina, saying, all right, do you have to worry about Josh Dobson and other guys? On the flip side, if Josh Dobson had gotten up there on July 1st and said, hey, I'm going to Michigan, everybody would have been disappointed. But what would we all be doing? We'd be sitting here going, okay, South Carolina's going to keep recruiting him. He's going to keep talking to them. And if they have a good season, they'll have an opportunity to flip him, And I think I take him at his word, especially with a kid like Josh, in trying to clarify it afterwards. But regardless of the public comments or not, there's just a reality nowadays to where the guys that you have committed until they're signed, you have to keep recruiting them, because that's the nature of recruiting in the modern era. You've got NIL involved. You've got coaches moving. You've got the ability to, get out of letters much more easily than it used to be. You have all these different factors going on to where you have to monitor it. But I know some get more up in arms or upset about these public comments than others. but you just kind of have to take them for what they are. And even if he had not made them, even if he had just posted a graphic about his commitment and didn't have an announcement, didn't talk to the media, these are still things we would be having to monitor up until the season and up until signing day.
Yeah, and you guys have both pointed out this continues to put the emphasis on how important this season's going to be for Coach Beamer, because while recruiting is great and while having a great 27 class is awesome, if you're not taking advantage of the talent that you do have, that we do know is at a high level in college football. We talk about the guys that have returned and Sellers, Stewart, Harbor, Peak coming in and all that. If you don't take advantage of the talent that you have right now and turn in a successful season, well, this recruiting class may be for naught because you're looking for a new head coach and those guys might end up committing somewhere else anyway. So a lot of emphasis on this season and why it's so important to get things back on track. And again, where's that line of success? Bowl game, 6 wins, 7 wins. We can debate that until the season starts and even in the season. But regardless, going 4-8 or 5-7 again, not going to be acceptable. And you would have a tougher time hanging on to this class if that's the case.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Josh, too, being by all intents and purposes an in-state recruit, it certainly helps South Carolina. He's right down the road. It's not a situation like I think if you're trying to hold on to a guy who is, 500, 1,000 miles away, and maybe there's a local school constantly still working them and trying to get them to flip and staying in touch with them, I think that's maybe a different story. With Dobson, too, like, and I'm not saying it was not a tough decision for him, but I would say this, for all the buzz about some of these other schools throughout the process, like LSU at one point, you can go back, Tennessee was talked about a ton, Texas A&M was considered like the favorite for a stretch. I mean, ultimately, it kind of has sounded like Michigan may have finished second. And so I don't know. I just don't know if there was a long-term number 2 to South Carolina that you would just kind of say, man, that's a school you have to watch out for the entirety of the process. They were so strong there for so long. Like, I just don't know if anybody fits that category. So not saying you don't have to worry about it. You always have to be aware of those possibilities. But anytime you were to have gotten a guy as talented as Josh Dobson, people aren't going to give up, man. That's always been the case in recruiting. That's not anything that's new. That's not anything that's necessarily, even NIL related. It's just a fact of the matter. Until you're on campus, people are going to keep recruiting you to try to get you on their campus.
Yeah, and I think, what you said there made me think of 3 of the 4 recruitments, not counting Jaden Brody because he was a shorter term recruitment, somebody the staff knew about but hadn't on campus offered him after they loved his camp workout. The other guys that they got, Dobson, Davion Jones, Nate Carson from last week, these last several days, these were long-term recruitments. And they show that even in the NIL era, the relationships still matter, right? Like, these are guys they've recruited for a long time to where you can look at each of those recruitments, and at one point or another, South Carolina was the either public or behind-the-scenes leader or both. And every single one of those recruitments had some other schools, a school or multiple schools, that rose up and challenged South Carolina. And maybe they took the lead, maybe they were a co-leader. But South Carolina was always there for all of those guys. Jones, Carson, Dobson, they were the one kind of constant, whereas the other ones kind of cycled on and off the list. And at the end of the day, I think that really helped South Carolina to circle back and be able to land commitments from these guys because they were the constant. They were consistent, and that helped with 3 of these 4 recruitments from last week.
Obviously, again, a big weekend for South Carolina on the recruiting front and plenty more spots to fill for the 27 class and signing day coming up in early December. As we head into this break, before we wrap up the hour, I have 2 family 4-packs to go see the Columbia Fireflies tomorrow night. Taking on, here's a name I've never heard of before, the Salem Ridgeacs. You guys familiar with the Salem Ridgeacs?
Say the word?
Ridgeacs. Yaks that live on a ridge, apparently, according to Dreamy Josh. Tomorrow at Segra Park, 2 family 4-packs for callers number 3 and 4 right now.
Say it one more time, Tyler.
The Salem Ridgeacs. 2 family 4-packs, callers 3 and 4 right now.
I have not heard that one. I do love the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. That's probably my favorite minor league team name.
Is it the Toledo Mud Hens? Who are the Trash Pandas?
Oh, I don't know.
There's a trash pandas out there too. Minor league baseball gets quirky.
The
names.
Richmond Flying Squirrels.
Yep,
also one of my favorites.
Yeah, they got some unique names. But if you want to see the Ridgiacs play the Fireflies, college number 3 and 4 right now at 803-404-6100. We'll check buy or sell coming up next to wrap up the hour here on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris Wrapping up the hour here on your Monday on the Game. By the way, looked it up. The Trash Pandas are of Rocket City, which is apparently Madison, Alabama. One of the better minor league team names out there. Rocket City Trash Pandas. But
how did they come up with that?
I don't know. Salem Ridge Yaks, though, that's points for creativity.
I still don't even know what you're saying, but it does sound cool.
It's a yak that lives on a ridge.
Yeah, when you first said it, I thought you were going ridgy yaks, like one word, and I was like, I've never heard of that word. I don't know if I've ever heard of a ridge yak either, but I was more confused by the first. So,
well, if you want to see him, head on down to Segra Park tomorrow night. Watch the Fireflies play him. So there you go. Congrats to Nick and Omar for winning the tickets there. On Thursday, we played Buy or Sell because we weren't here on Friday, obviously. I didn't feel like bothering Wes because he was already out at the beach and he did an hour of radio, so I didn't want to bother you even more.
You could have hit me with it on the 10 o'clock show.
I didn't think about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were all coasting through the end of last week. But again, we're not keeping score with this. That'll start when football comes back around. The question I did ask Chris, though, was commits for the rest of the weekend. Again, we only had Dobson at that point in time. I set the line at 1.5. He confidently bought the over.
That was a layup. That was a layup.
I think that was the indication that it was going to be a good couple of days for South Carolina, and it was.
Yes, it was. Good job, Chris.
I mean, yeah, like that's a layup, like standing on a ladder. You know,
we've lowered the goal all the way down.
That's dropping the ball in the Fisher-Price goal. Like that was easy work, I thought.
Well, and I think that gave people a lot of confidence with how emphatically you answered that question that things were going to go well, and they did.
Yes.
They were trending in the right direction.
They were. Buy or Sell number 2. There were 6 round of 32 games left by the time we ended our show on Thursday in the World Cup. The Buy or Sell was at least 2 of the favorites would lose, and all 6 favorites actually won. You had some close games. You had some tight games, including Argentina and Cape Verde, but all 6 favorites did end up winning the rest of the World Cup games in the round of 32.
I can't even remember what I believe I picked Australia to win, and they did not. And there was one other that I picked to win, but yeah, all 6. Y'all, a couple of the games from the last few days were absolutely insane. The Cape Verde game, when that guy hit that top corner goal from way out, I mean, I was like, Cape Verde's going to win this game, you know? I mean, just an amazing game. And I don't know if y'all got to check out. So last night, Mexico-England was absolutely electric.
Barn burner.
I mean, oh, man, it had some of everything. It had penalties. It had some controversy. It had somebody getting sent off. It had a shorthanded goal. The environment there was absolutely incredible. I mean, Jude Bellingham with a performance for the ages. I mean, it had everything in that game.
And Mexico had never lost a World Cup game in Azteca, I believe, either, right?
That's right. Yeah. They do not lose there often whatsoever. So I think they had, 3 losses ever there. So
we did not get that right for 2 of the favorites going down. Third Buy or Sell, Braves would still hold the NL East lead by Monday, which they did. Thankfully, the Mets were in town. They took 2 out of 3. Almost had a pretty improbable comeback yesterday. Drake Baldwin hits a grand slam. They get 1 run short of tying the game after being down 7 runs going in the 9th inning. Still one more game coming up tonight to wrap up that series. But, just when you need a get-right series, the Mets come to town, and that's what the Braves needed.
Very, very thankful for the Mets. Also, guys, on a very sad note, I do want to send out thoughts, prayers, condolences. Some of you may know the Twitter account at 3x5. Megan, huge Braves fan. I feel like I didn't see her as much interacting in Gamecock Twitter, but I think she went to South Carolina, was a Gamecock fan as well. I know she's a big Duke basketball fan, but unfortunately lost her life to cancer this past weekend and was just a huge sports fan, just awesome follow on Twitter, great personality. So just wanted to acknowledge that and send out a condolences to her friends and family.
Yeah, for sure. I saw that as well. I know she hadn't tweeted in maybe a month or so, a couple of months or something like that. So people were obviously concerned with what's going on there. But yeah, unfortunately, did learn that she did pass over the weekend. So as Wes said there, thoughts and prayers to everyone, friends and family and all that. And again, the good presence there on Twitter. That was a fun follow and certainly will be missed. So for the Braves' perspective, winning or hopefully winning the series tonight, if they can take 3 out of 4, can be a good way to honor her, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. And C.J. Nikowski had, I think, had some interactions with her. Had sent some Braves gear from the press box and stuff like that. So it was nice to see people kind of reach out and try to give her final days, just some positivity. But certainly will be missed on Braves Twitter.
Absolutely. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show. Up next as your Monday rolls along here on The Game.